I believe we are live and audible.
Audible.
Welcome. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Hope everyone's having a pleasant day. Today is our surprise upload.
Surprise.
Speaking of surprises, we'll get to that.
All right, our first, we'll get to that.
Don't want to jump the gun too soon. So anyhow, we're back for this Tuesday, and Tuesday might actually be a good time for us to consistently stream. We've kind of talked about it. However, this Tuesday, consider it just the random surprise of the week. Now,
Pretend you were surprised.
pretend. Now, I'm your host on the left, Owl.
I'm your host on the right, Brok.
And this is Get the Mic, where we dissect the mythological meaning of fiction. In this episode, we're talking about the last episode of the Tenkaichi Budokai, 23rd, I believe.
23rd.
21st Tenkaichi Budokai that ends with Master Roshi and Goku having their final blows. But before we get to that, I believe my co-host has some addendums for us to get to.
So we kind of got ahead of ourselves a little bit talking about how it was the moon that got destroyed, but it wasn't really ahead of ourselves because no one ever believed that Goku was dead. But sort of to tie it back into the context of what's happening throughout the rest of this episode, I kind of wanted to talk a bit about the meaning of the final attack from Roshi in this episode. You know, we had said that the original translation was International Surprise Palm.
Oh, yes.
So I guess we can start there. And one thing that's happened since we recorded last is that I read half of Journey to the West and sort of recontextualized a little bit of my knowledge about this mythology. And so now I understand, and I can kind of explain why he was using that term. So, short summary of what happens in Journey to the West is that the Monkey King has declared himself as equal to the heavens and is wreaking havoc. And the Buddha calls on him and tells him, look, if you don't stop, you're going to lose everything. This whole ruckus that you're causing, you're attacking heaven, it's not going to work out for you and you're going to lose it. So you need to submit to a higher ideal and pursue the path of enlightenment instead of just bettering yourself. And Monkey says, who are you to challenge me? And he says, well, let's make a bet. If you can jump out of my palm, I will put you on the throne as the Jade Emperor. If you cannot jump out of my palm, then I will cast you out, and you will not be able to nuisance us anymore. You won't be able to do what you've been doing. And so Monkey says, easy. And he says, okay, prove to me that you've jumped out of my palm, essentially. And so Monkey says, okay. He jumps out of his palm and flies to the edge of the known world to one of the 5 pillars that hold up the heavens. And he graffitis the wall. It's probably the oldest mythological example of this, where he says, Monkey was here. And he pees on the wall to show that it was him that vandalized or the pillar, and then flies back to the Buddha. The Buddha shows him that the marking of Monkey was here is on his finger, and sort of reveals to him that the Buddha's palm encompasses everything. It encompasses the whole known world out to the pillars that hold up the heavens itself. And so we were talking about how this is Goku's greatest pinch, and what the attack, the lightning surprise attack, meant whenever he was holding Goku there and telling him, submit to the hierarchy, submit to me, this is the end of the journey. And he's saying, you know, if you keep resisting, you'll die. If you keep resisting, you will lose everything, right? And so what does Monkey do? He thinks that he is jumping out of his palm by acting like Monkey, by vandalizing the wall, peeing on it, attacking the hierarchy, right? And so, as I had said before, I was like, you need to be careful because it might just be turtles all the way down, right? It literally is turtle hermits all the way down. Because this is Roshi using that technique. This led me into sort of figuring out what Roshi meant. So I'm curious, Owl, do you know the meaning of Roshi? What it means in different languages?
No, go ahead.
Okay,
Give me the etymological lesson.
so the etymology of Roshi. Let me zoom in here so I can actually see it. Here we go. So the Japanese Roshi is a translation of the more antiquated Chinese Laozi, see Lao Tzu, meaning old master and connoting the archetype of a wise old man. Or as you could say, this means Sinex, or Sinex is Latin for Roshi.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So Roshi is literally named after the archetype of the wise old man.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever we say that Roshi is this blind king, this is the blind archetype that the Roshi represents. The Roshi. Now, one thing I want to point out about the Roshi, there's interesting context to what Zen Buddhism considers to be a Roshi. A Roshi is the master of masters, okay? What is unique about a Roshi traditionally is that he has received something called Dharma transmission, which means that he has a lineage to the Buddha himself, that what he has learned has been passed down directly, generationally, through masters to him. So he is a recipient of the true knowledge of the Buddha, the wisdom of the Buddha, right? And that's why Roshi, in this situation, can use this true technique that mythologically was used against the Monkey King, right?
Well, we also have to consider it was used against Gohan, right? Let's try to bring it
Yeah.
back to Dragon Ball. And I do like how you say that escaping it, Goku turns in. I mean, Wukong acts like a monkey.
Mhm.
But actually, I was thinking of that dimension. I wasn't exactly thinking of that story with the palm,
Right.
but
Well, I can tie it in.
no, it ties in well. What I was thinking was kind of exactly that, like the
It scales, right?
the scales of hierarchy. Let's
Mhm.
say,
Because this is not the first time that something like this has happened to Goku as well. He was a wild child. Well, we'll
Right.
get to that because I'll say that we'll get to that because I don't think they talk about that explicitly until later, so we have the context for Gohan.
yes,
So because they don't talk about it until Z,
right until rat.
and that's about Gohan. So anyway, but explicitly saying that,
Well, what I was gonna say is, the scales of
Mhm.
hierarchy is basically what he uses. But I wanted to say as well, it is also a lesson in the idea of what Dr. Peterson says, that those who have swords and know how to use them, but
Mhm.
keep them sheathed. Right. This is a time for Goku to keep it sheathed. Like, he can't match up to the scales of hierarchy.
See, here's the problem though, is that Goku does the same thing. He gazes at the moon, he transforms into a giant monkey, and he attacks the arena itself.
Yes.
And so, what does Roshi do? He severs his connection to the heavens. He casts him down into the rubble, right? The rubble of his destruction, which is literally what happens. And they say in Journey to the West, they're like, oh, monkey's head's poking out from under the mountain when he casts him down under the hierarchy, right?
Mhm.
And then they recognize Goku because his tail is sticking out from the rubble. And so it's really interesting. I think that what happened in Z was they condensed this idea down to his origins with Gohan, right? Because Gohan, everything that happens with Gohan, so that they
Let's
could
not get too.
back it
We've
up.
already
Right?
been going
But
a
yeah.
little while.
Well, I'm just trying to wrap it up. But that idea, right? Because in my opinion, this is a real representation of that, showing that humility and the step that goes sort of why you can't declare yourself equal to the heavens, or why you can't be ultimately number one under the heavens, right?
And it's because it's everything,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's the lesson, and it's a surprise as well. We have barely talked about that, but it's a surprise because it's almost a limitless fountain of knowledge that there's always going to be hierarchies.
Well, there's always a bigger fish, and that's
Right.
explicitly what he's saying.
And I do want to add, though, because not only I wouldn't say because of what the Uzuru represents that he cast him down from heaven necessarily. I do like the parallels that you draw, but I think too something holds true in what we were saying about severing his connection
Mm-hmm.
and having the what is the archetype called?
The Synex.
Synex, the Roshi.
The Roshi
right?
archetype, yeah.
Being the one who has the power to withhold the dangers of the world to a fledgling hero, let's say.
Right. We've finally hit that transition between true levels of the hierarchy, right? It's whenever you hit the limit of it, and then you see that the Buddha's reach is limitless. That the Roshi has a connection to the Buddha that is infinite, and it goes to the pillars that uphold the heavens themselves.
Yes.
So.
And what's up there? The moon. Destroyed. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Well, the moon also being the satellite, the connection that Goku has to the heavens, right? It's like if he can channel himself through the moon to be a heavenly being, right? And that's why the Saiyans are heavenly beings, right? So it's his ability to be of cosmic significance, and it's sort of like we need to lay the hero a little bit lower in this story because
well, it's not only that, but that part of him could be appealing, let's say.
And
but the
this
point
is
about Goku, right? Is he's unconscious about it.
Yeah,
and we're gonna get to that in this episode, so let's not get too ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, I was just gonna say this is why the God King archetype.
Let's go ahead and get started. Right? Yeah. So, firstly, we have exactly what we were talking about: the destruction of the moon by the Muten Roshi, and everyone thinks Goku might be dead. Clearly he's not, but it is the destruction of the moon, which we'll get to. Here, I think I just have a couple of clips here, so I think we kind of covered this already, actually. we were just talking through it.
This is the fallout of the destruction of it and them not really knowing that...
Yeah, that's what's happening.
That Goku's still alive, right? So we kind of talked about how we see that... They see that his tail sticking out from the rubble.
Yeah, and what I wanted to say, too, is that it's not like the Buddha casting him down in a certain way. I think it's an expansion because he uses the Kamehameha wave, right? The truth and let's say the logos to create order out of Goku's chaotic ancestral everything that Uzuru is, let's say. And he does that for a specific reason. It's because Goku's not conscious to be that yet. Right? Also, it's significant to note that he's much stronger with his tail. So, just something to think about going forward.
Yeah.
So here is where Brok was talking about his tail sticking out, like Monkey's head sticks out until the priest comes and rescues him in Journey to the West. Now here, Roshi is upset that the announcer hasn't counted. He's shown everyone that the moon is destroyed. And yeah, we've already talked about this too.
There's some funny stuff about this. Where
there is, though.
The announcer, I love this part of the episode because he says, ladies and gentlemen, Jackie Chan has done a reprehensible thing.
Yeah.
And it's like the tone that he uses to announce everything is so funny to me.
Well, the thing is, though, it's not reprehensible. It's actually just what Goku needs at this juncture because he's, let's say, his heritage is almost mythological, which is something that's different about Dragon Ball. I want to point that out, that we talk about Sun Wukong and let's say Osiris the King, story of Horus. That, let's say, the lineage behind those are a lot, let's say, more shallow than what we see in Goku, and we'll see that develop as what Brock was saying in Z. It does a lot of that.
Yeah.
So he'll never transform into that monster ever again.
Yeah, and the announcer says werewolves won't be able to transform. There won't be any more elegance or tastefulness or anything. And I kind of like that.
It's erasing the dark side of the yin and yang, right? There's no more of that chaos from which to create order, which is necessary for the, let's say, logos to manifest.
Yeah, he's kind of saying like the process is what's elegant. It's like we can't ever be converting chaos into order if there's no chaos in the first place.
But if the chaos overwhelms that which redeems the world, is it necessary to reduce that?
Well, we'll see, right?
Well, I think we A lot of us already know.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see. So then the match resumes, and Jackie Chun is tired. Goku is completely naked.
He is completely naked. His nakedness is seen here, right?
Yes, after, let's say, being overwhelmed by that mode of being. Sure.
I like that it's Krillin that gives him his gi to clothe himself now in this situation, right? It's pretty symbolic of, with Goku's connection to his shadow being severed, this sort of ego construct that's connected to him saying, okay, like, clothe your, you can still clothe yourself in the gi, right? You still have your connection to Roshi, like your training is still, it's not just unconscious. You still have wisdom of it and you still have knowledge of it, right?
Right, and let's say Goku can still integrate that,
Mm-hmm.
and he does so here, and he's questioned by Krillin though about turning into a monster, and he kind of blows it off. So that's that, and Goku's unconscious almost willingly, but it's just he's unconscious to it,
Naively.
and not just naively, I think it's for a reason he's unconscious to it. The knowledge of the killing of one's own father, right?
Mm-hmm.
At this age might not behoove a hero, let's say.
Yeah.
It could be detrimental.
It could do a lot.
And I'm not saying for or against it. Might actually be the one of the things that causes a lot of suffering is their refusal to tell, oh goodness, things are freezing. Their refusal to tell Goku what he is.
Yeah, well, I mean, rationally speaking, it's like letting him know that it could potentially happen in some other circumstance that you don't know, right?
Well,
Could
they
be
think they have it under
beneficial.
control, though.
Yeah.
Under control, as far as they know.
As far as they know.
But yeah, it is interesting to see Krillin clothe him and him don his old gi, actually. His old uniform
He's
from
back
the
into his
Orin
monk
Temple.
garb, yeah.
And to see how far Krillin's come, right? He's really rooting for Goku. He's being, let's say, acting out of one's self, right? Not intrinsic to oneself like he was in the beginning. He's come a long way, and I think Krillin, really interesting the second half of this episode how the tone shifts because it reminds me of a later moment. But Krillin and Goku definitely have that mirror, but it's coming to an end. Like this is the end of their journey together, really.
Yeah, I mean this is,
and that's kind of signified here with what happens.
Yeah. Well, I love it because the changing of the garb, putting Krillin back into his monk uniform, is it's sort of like, okay, you've been measured, right? Now turn inward. And so it's time for Krillin to sort of
well, how does
digest.
How does a person progress after tying so much identity to another, right? They have to go back to their past.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happens here with Krillin. And a lot of people don't do that, let's say.
Yeah, I mean, it's the, and in Buddhism, it's sort of seeking the self. It's seeking the sinner.
Yeah.
And so Krillin needs to re-center, needs to seek his self, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of why they're separating here.
Right. And yeah, I mean, that's the reason why they do separate. I mean, that's not until next episode, but this is the end of their, let's say, their journey in the hierarchy, right? The journey in the Tenkaichi Budokai. It's the last moments for them before it's over. And it says that it's not opening a good enough stream.
Oh, no. We might have technical difficulties.
It says stream status poor. Poor stream. Well, we're just going to continue. Why is this lagging so badly? Huh.
Weird.
Anyway, so also significant to note is what brings Goku to the attention that he's naked. It's those girls, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then he says, what do you think about Winkies that's uncommon or something like that?
Oh, you must be girls, right? Because he doesn't
Yes.
recognize them
Okay, it
as
seems
girls.
good. Good. Welcome, Chris Sombra.
But yeah, it's that judgmental gaze, right? And then it sort of wakes him to his nakedness, as it archetypally does.
And then he has to face his what do you want to call it? His counterpart, let's say, and reclothe himself after being a monkey.
Well, it's almost like you end up with this sort of death of this aspect of yourself, and you can still rely on the gi of your father master archetype, right? You can rely on what you've been taught, and so it's pretty great here because it's like he's awoken to the fact that he needs to clothe himself in that to continue.
Well, and remember, he always clothes himself in this, and I think it's because of what the Roshi does for him by eliminating the moon. That could have been his biggest downfall.
Sure. That could define him as a villain, right?
Yeah, definitely. And so Goku then goes back into the ring, and they resume their fight. Oh, goodness, it's lagging. All right. They resume their fight, and immediately Master Roshi goes for a Kamehameha wave, but he can't do it.
It just puffs out.
It puffs out. Right, and it's to say that his propensity now to, and its energy is almost you can think of it as a literal translation in a way, because it is your let's say your energetic will, right, behind it, and that can be lessened, that can be reduced for sure. So he's unable to launch his Logos beam at Goku, and so Goku fires one back at him. Not very powerful, but Jackie Chun jumps to miss it. And what is very interesting to note is that Goku jumps up like Jackie Chun did in the first.
It's exactly like the fight started. Yeah.
Now he knew immediately what to do. He did it back from this, but he was still hungry at the time, so he's probably not going to be able to do this again. I think they say.
Literally, it's not just that. It's another case of here's the last thing that I saw get used, and then Roshi reacts to it
against
as
him. It worked.
It
plays
almost
out
worked multiple patterns at the same time, right?
But Roshi
just saw a Kamehameha, right? And he was like, okay, I'll use a Kamehameha. And then Roshi jumps. And he's like, oh yeah, the last time I started a fight, that happened.
And what happens to Roshi?
Roshi is almost ringed out.
Knocked out of the ring, let's say.
But he catches himself at the last second by wedging himself into the hierarchy, wedging himself into the stage, right?
Right, saying that, indicating all he can do without the Logos, right? He's only able to maintain. Right, he can't do what he once was. And that's partially because all of the, let's say, spirit manifest that he used to destroy the moon, which is really the gateway for Goku, right? Goku's shadow. But go ahead.
Yeah, well, I just think it's interesting that it's like it's almost not. It's implying that he can't be knocked out of the ring, right? The thing that would have knocked Goku out of the ring, if not for his ability to fly with his tail, can't knock Jackie Chun out of the ring because he can literally just wedge his foot into the side of the ring and not ultimately, like, falling out isn't falling out for Jackie, right? He fell out, but he didn't fall out. So I think just symbolically, it's just implying, like, even if you ring out, right? Even if you are technically able to do what he did to you, that doesn't ring him out, right?
Well, and it's also to say that it's impossible or very difficult to knock the spiritual father or the let's say ancestral spirit lower in the hierarchy than you, or than the hero, even especially at this point. And actually, I also want to mention Goku's frown right there, right as Jackie Chun goes down. That's that frown of judgment that we were mentioning earlier, right? And it wouldn't be it wouldn't be sufficient. In fact, Goku, I mean, he smiles in a minute, but um, Goku wouldn't be able to progress in the journey as he is without, if he won at this point, is what I want to say.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
that
yeah.
would be that would be Goku debasing the spiritual ancestor, and all that we've brought along with that, including the international surprise palm, right? Putting that lower than confronting things with truth, which is what Goku does best. Which there are higher ideals, and I think that's what's solidified here with
Yeah.
Jackie Chan not being able to be
Yeah, I think that's
knocked
the
out.
perfect way to put it, right? It's saying that, okay, that's great, but that's not better than this mode of being. That's not better than this approach to the world or this understanding, right? It's sort of the path of enlightenment, you could say, is more than just approaching things truthfully.
Right. And it is respecting the hierarchies, right?
Mhm.
Participating in them willingly.
Because you could say truthfully, I think that I'm better than everyone I fight against, and it's like that's not the path of enlightenment, but
and
it's
see
truthful.
that's it. I mean, we'll talk about how Goku's character deteriorates one day. Not today, but today he's on top. He's the champ. Yay, 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 he says. So then Roshi has to pull himself up from there, and Goku's all smiles, thinking he can win easily. But Roshi comes up and he basically decrees, and I think it's interesting to note that he says you can no longer use your Kamehameha wave. And Goku's like, really?
Yeah, he's like, "Oh, you know that? You can tell." It's kind of his response, right? And he's like, "Well, sure enough."
I think it lagged.
Are we in the right slides?
No, we are.
Oh,
No,
there
it's
we
just
go.
it's really
Yeah,
like glitchy. Hold on.
strange.
My computer's working as hard as it can. So yeah, what happens, right, is that Roshi challenges Goku to a showdown, right?
Yeah, he says, "Smash your power against mine. It's gonna just be the force of our strength." And that's it. He says, "We don't have the ability for any of our tricks. We can't use any of our special techniques. It's literally just going to be the merit of our skill now."
And this
to-
is to say, right, that the spirit of the hero and the spirit of the spiritual ancestor are very closely tied in terms of let's say positive force they can put in the world.
Well, it's almost to say that in the way, the old master still has that much of the spirit of the hero in him, that however powerful the archetype of the hero is, the spirit of the old master still has the spirit of the hero within him and still can meet it blow for blow.
Yes. I was almost thinking of an analogy of like two rockets in a Mario Party mini game going up and like just barely overcoming another. But right, so that he challenges them to an all-out brawl, and they have it,
And it's fantastic.
It's pretty fantastic. The choreography is great, and I think we're going to get to more of it in just a second. But first, I do want to mention, like you said, they don't use anything elaborate. It's no more tricks. And Goku agrees to this. Now, Roshi's eyes glow there at the end as well. And I think Goku agreeing to this is encapsulated in a couple of episodes ago where Krillin says that he foolishly accepted the game of rock, paper, scissors. Goku's already sealed his fate. He's playing on Roshi's terms. Out of, let's say, exhaustion, there's nothing more for him to copy. He's copied everything except for the surprise palm, but he can't do that.
Right. Because he might be in the process of Dharma transmission, but he's not there, right? So it's great too because there's this interplay between the spirit of this logos defining the terms of a hierarchical struggle and Goku. It's very similar to him being able to put Goku to sleep, right? Goku submits to it automatically. Archetypally, he submits to it and says, okay, those are the terms. I'll compete within those terms. And it's like, you fool, I define the terms. I'm higher than the terms, right? In the same way that Goku was able to cheat before, Goku cheating here would actually keep him in the fight. But he has
Well, maybe not even
been
cheating, but
humbled,
like,
I guess, in a sense, right? Not cheating, but you know what I mean. Taking control of the terms of the struggle that he's having.
well, and also now that Goku's acknowledging that he can't cast down the mode of being the Jack represents below him in the hierarchy, that it is going to be one of them is going to have to submit to the other,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how hierarchies work, right? This is the biggest two lobsters in the tank.
Yeah, this is basically like we both agree that the terms of being able to be on the top now is purely on our will. It's purely on, you know, at the end of the day, it all boils down to that, right?
Well, and it is Jackie Chan's gambit too, because as the show is also telling us about the hierarchies, the let's say the heroic archetype can take a lot more damage to its spirit and still remain.
Oh yeah, it's
Let's
lagging
say.
now.
I know, that's what I've been saying.
Yeah.
It can take a lot more damage to its spirit and still remain the hero, whereas let's say the archetypal ancestral spirit sometimes and oftentimes dies in because of that, the shock to its spirit, let's say.
Sure. I mean, archetypally, that typically precedes a sort of flood or a Tower of Babel type situation, too, right? Where the death of the spirit of that archetypal father of fathers or master of masters, it's like, you know, it happens a lot. I think that's one of the great things about Dragon Ball is that it's kept most of the time in the place that it really belongs, and we can explore that, you know.
Right, and I just wanted to say that because that happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because
It's fine. It looks fine over here.
it's just lagging here and there.
It's just YouTube.
So, anyways, because of that, Roshi has to end this. Like he can't continue, because the more chaos Roshi gives Goku, the more powerful he becomes. Basically,
Yeah, he is that force.
He makes order. He transmits it to order quick, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, he's that force.
Well,
and
he's
so
dialogical in that way, right?
Yeah, and exactly. And Roshi acknowledges that and says basically that he has to end this immediately.
Mm-hmm.
He's at the point where he's at the end. He's used the surprise palm. He's used the Kamehameha wave. He's out of options. The heroic spirit has proved to almost be a match for the ancestral.
Yeah, well, with it being blow for blow, it's like this is the final blow, and that's why the fight is blow for blow, because it's like the terms are the same, so the attacks are the same, and with that being something that Roshi just has more experience at, by definition, right? I want to point that out. It's by definition that he would always have more experience. This is a contest that Goku essentially would always lose. It's kind of like a trump card for the Elder, right? For the Synex or the Roshi.
Mm-hmm.
It's like my size and
well,
my
it's
experience.
Yeah, and not just size like physical size, but size of spirit, let's say.
Yeah.
Is more
bigness.
is more developed. His bigness get big.
Mm-hmm.
Than Goku, and to match it immediately is going to be beneficial to that. Let's say,
because this is Goku dealing with the idea of what Roshi represents.
Yes. And so they both go in for a last kick smash.
And it really looks for a second there like Goku's still going to be able to overcome that. But what's interesting about it is that he can't speak his victory. Why do you think that is?
Oh, it's definitely he can't articulate his victory because and this is why I think too that he goes unconscious, is because Goku is unable at this point to acknowledge Roshi, what Roshi is, to see Roshi as he is, as Roshi, right?
Mm-hmm.
See through the Jackie Chun facade. And that's how ultimately Goku loses, is by falling to the, let's say, not tricks. I don't want to say tricks, but falling for challenging the spiritual ancestor on his own terms, on those spiritual terms, right? The spirit of the fight is what he invokes in Goku to get it anyways out of him.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's unable to articulate that because he can't see it.
Yeah, it's almost like he can't understand why he would win. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't logically like connect for Goku. You know, he can think that he deserves the win, but symbolically, like speaking truth, he wouldn't be speaking truth if he said that he really won. And it's kind of weird to say it that way, but we see as he's not able to speak it and he falls unconscious that Roshi was baiting that out of him. He was trying to get him to that point where he had to, I guess, confront the idea that it wasn't true, that he was number one under the heavens or equal to the heavens, right? And that's why, in some ways, I think that it articulates that myth in a more concise way than, say, Journey to the West. But yeah, because then Jackie just jumps up and makes a show of saying, "I won." Like he basically doesn't look tired at all for a second there.
But he allows Goku to try.
Yeah, because it's about what failure does Goku have, right?
And it's ultimately, it's the failure of sight. He wasn't able to see Jackie Chun invoking in him a spirit to play it into his advantage, right? And so, and he has the will. He definitely has the will, but he doesn't have the sight. I think he even closes his eyes while he's trying to say that he's the champion, right?
Yeah. Well, it's like he skipped over the enlightenment part of this fight. The lightning, he didn't actually overcome.
Right, and so that prevents him from being able to speak forth his being into the world.
And to know, right, that this is not a trick, but by definition, he wouldn't be able to win in a contest like this because the end of the contest is the submission to the hierarchy.
And the only way he was going to get out of that is by invoking destruction.
Yeah, attacking the hierarchy itself again, which he couldn't do. So, yeah.
The spirit of the adversary, let's say.
Yeah.
Our analytics are all over the place. At one time it said we had 6 views. At one time it said 4 views. Now it's just like changing. Anyways.
It's staying up over here.
So Jackie Chun wins.
I want to say, though, he would not have won if it wasn't for my favorite background character so far in the series.
Oh, get along, Jackie.
Cowboy Jackie Chun fan. Get along there, Jackie Chun.
Yeah, he's good.
This episode, I want to say, this is the funniest episode this far into this, like thus far, I should say, into the series. We were laughing out loud throughout this whole episode. Really good one, yeah. It is hilarious.
See, right now it says we have 3. Look at this, and then it's gonna go back. Anyway, so
we'll just have to see.
Jackie Chun pushed me as far as the Muten Roshi, right? He's happy with what has transpired with Goku. He barely won it. And now he asks Jackie Chun to train him because he wants to learn, and he's doing what he always does, is confront that with truth. But the significance of this is to say that the ancestral spirit who represents, in this case, he's almost the hierarchy itself fighting in place of a fighter for Goku. Not specifically, but I mean Krillin as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as the representative of that, that's what Jackie Chun really is. He's able to allow Goku to accept his place in a hierarchy before proceeding to another. And we're going to see him proceed to another next episode.
Yeah, well, Goku had to lose honestly, right?
And he did.
Because, and that's why, we kind of pointed that out in the last episode or maybe the episode before, where it has to be that there's the potential for victory in Goku's mind. He has to fail on honest terms rather than being like, oh, of course, having even any excuse to lose, right?
At this stage, definitely. In what he's saying. Oh, man, it is really laggy. All right, so now we see it.
Unlike that new age girl with her blue hair and her fancy gadgets. I know, right?
Well, the old guy, hey, Texas, cheers to Texas. Also, we have no viewers right now, apparently.
Thank you, Base Texas.
Thank you, Base YouTube. So what we see, right, is the representative of the hierarchy putting Goku in his place, more or less, through all his tricks and cunning from the fight. It's a very satisfying fight to watch as well, just to bring up the aesthetic value.
Yeah, I love that Roshi kind of stands over him and tells him that was a fantastic fight. Like he congratulates him on his ability to tackle the concept of the hierarchy, right?
Over and over and over, he tackles each set of them. Like, here's the basic. Can you play, right?
Mm-hmm.
We established that. He said, "Can you tell the truth and turn chaos into order?" And they blasted each other with Kamehameha waves.
It's almost like he's
knocked
testing
each other out. It's
if he can send him out into the world too. It's like, and that's that Buddhist spirit. It's like, okay, let me test your spirit, like see how true you are before I send you out into the world to maybe, affect the world in a significant way.
500-year prison, right?
Yeah.
So be it. But Goku doesn't. Goku can adapt a lot quicker, and so he does. And I'm not even going to comment on it anymore. So they run off, and it's a somber tone. It's in that that sunset phase when integration is happening after that experience, and Goku needs to integrate more than ever now because he's taken in so much information that now the physical manifestation of that is going to be, oh goodness, the hiccup. Nope. So here's what's gonna happen.
More technical difficulties.
No, we're not having them. I'm gonna turn off the preview from now on, probably. So what that manifests in is Goku eating all this food, right?
Well, it's the culmination of all of the sustenance that pays for the wisdom that Goku just got, right? It's like, what's the and I love this. It's almost like this capitalist interpretation of what has happened, because it's like the value is quantified down to what it took to get the value, and you kind of have to respect it. It's like, oh, we quantify down what it takes to support the value that Goku got. Quantify it, and Goku's so pure, there's almost no waste.
Yeah, and Jackie Chan doesn't get to keep any of it.
He keeps 30K because it comes out to 470,000 out of 500,000.
Yes. But I mean, I will say, I agree with what you're saying, that the sustenance that fuels the hero gained through the fight, I think, is transcribed here now. And what was the reward for the fight is exactly that.
The sustenance to fight.
Go on in the hierarchy. The best reward is only to be able to continue to the next hierarchy after achieving.
Right, because that's the thing. Goku can't fight if he's hungry. That's his limitation.
Yes. Yes. And so, the end of the first of the series, 21st Tenkaichi Budokai, with Jackie Chan as the champion and Goku as the runner-up. I think we've said a lot. Do you want to kind of wrap up some, though?
Yeah, I guess we can sort of consolidate our thoughts on it. Ultimately, on what happened. I mean, what was the main story of what happened throughout this entire tournament?
Well, not just the tournament, but let's talk about the culmination of the growth of Goku throughout this arc. Let's say, starting with Master Roshi, right? He meets Krillin. They go through the training. They get ready for the tournament, the Turtle Hermit Way. I was thinking about that the other day. Move well. And so they go to the tournament after learning from the spiritual ancestor, and not to mention the, let's say, archetypal mother. And they go out into the world, and they're able to confront hierarchies, and they're able to keep 6%. Oh, excellent. And they confront hierarchies. They're able to confront different modes of being. And ultimately what happens is both Krillin and Goku subordinate themselves to placing in the hierarchy, and Goku is able to go further because he's able to transcribe more of that chaos into order instead of trying to, let's say, surprise or sneak something past someone's vision. And by vision, I mean like all vision. And that's kind of what we get into in Dragon Ball Z as well when they start talking about sensing other people's power levels and stuff.
Yeah, to see someone, right?
And so Goku advances further than him. Yamcha doesn't even get on it because he's not willing to subordinate himself to the hierarchy.
Puer.
So that's pretty much where we end, is Goku doing that, and by doing that, he's able to go on his next journey, which we're gonna talk about on Sunday.
I like that.
I mean, on not Sunday.
On someday.
On some day, because Sunday is I have plans Sunday, so we can't do an episode Sunday. That's it.
Well, I like that the last shot of this episode too. It's showing the city lights that Goku's been introduced to, and it's kind of zooming off into the horizon, and you see the blinking red light sort of on the tip of the horizon, on the edge of civilization, right? And that's what we're about to start dealing with.
I'm trying to see if it is the last parts. It's weird. So yes, I think we kind of summed it up there well. I wanted to kind of bring it back to all of what happened and how Jackie Chun also has developed, because Jackie Chun as the spiritual ancestor has been pushed to his limit as well, as far as dealing with Goku resisting the international surprise palm, being able to transform into the Uzuru during their fight, right? He's been pushed to his limit as well. And even, let's say, Krillin using the blindness of the blind father. And I think that's also why he loses, too, is because he acknowledges the nakedness of the blind father. It causes him to lose. But he does
exposing the nakedness of your father is explicitly, even in biblical terms, a moral sin. You're missing the mark, right?
Right. And so Krillin, I think after that, too, is where he loses. And so Goku doesn't do anything like that. He doesn't try to sneak by someone's vision or exploit their blindness.
No, he only fights someone on the terms that they put forth. He uses the attacks that they use, right?
Right. And so Roshi's put to his limit because that is a mode of being not encountered by his mode of the spiritual ancestor, and it allows him for growth. And I think that's something that a lot of people in the community miss. They think that Roshi is a static character because he always likes the women's.
He never takes off the sunglasses. I mean, until he does. But
Anyways, if you liked what you heard, and I hope you did, because we've been putting a lot of thought into this, and I know our addendum was long, but we really are wanting to bring discussion to the Dragon Ball community.
Yeah, I think, what we're trying to do is point out that it's a low IQ take if you say that there's nothing deep about the show and that it's just funny.
I'm your host on the left, Owl.
I'm your host on the right, Brok.
And this was Get the Mic episode 28. Good night, everyone.